What's up, guys? Welcome to the Win Daily Sports Week 12 Thursday Night Football DFS Showdown Preview. That is a mouthful. We've got the best values in GPP stacks for our Thursday night game between the Colts and the Houston Texans. So let's dive right in. So we've got at the quarterback position Deshaun Watson. So looking at this game, guys, we have the Colts favored by 3 points and an over-under right around 45 points. So basically what I'm thinking about for this specific game is a bounce-back spot for Deshaun Watson. Ultimately, I think the Houston Texans are going to win this game. They really need to win this game to stay within the races in the AFC for the playoff picture. I just think that Houston has a little bit more upside with Deshaun Watson. So I do think that they need to get things going in this game, which is why I think Deshaun Watson is someone that you want to build around in your lineups for this week. I actually think that both quarterbacks are kind of viable, so I think that there is a case where you want to kind of build around both quarterbacks in a couple different builds. So for here, we'll start off with just a build that's focused specifically on Deshaun Watson. So we're going to get him into one of our flex spots. And then obviously with that means we also need to talk about a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins has absolutely, dominated when he's played against the Colts so far in his career. In his last couple games against the Colts, he has a touchdown reception in 4 straight games, and he's gone over 85 receiving yards. So I'm also pretty confident that Will Fuller is actually going to play in this game as well, and you see how effective Deshaun Watson is when Will Fuller is effective and plays. So that's really, I like those types of guys there. Then talking about the captain spot, so somebody that I really like in the captain spot, not even necessarily someone on the Texans. So this would also be something that you could be viable in your builds for Colts-specific players, is Nyheim Hines. So the popular waiver wire pickup this week has been Jonathan Williams on the Colts because of the injury to Marlon Mack. But, for me, I don't think that's necessarily how this is going to play out. Nyheim Hines is a pass-catching back. And that's exactly what the Houston Texans are the weakest against. So Jonathan Williams is at 5,600. And obviously, a lot of people play, that played seasonal leagues play in daily fantasy. And a lot of people are going to see Jonathan Williams like, oh, I couldn't get him on the waiver wire. Like, I'm going to play him in DFS. So this is a perfect pivot off of that for a guy like Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines is 6,200, so he's actually the most expensive running back of all of the backup running backs. So with Jonathan Williams and your other guy in Jordan Wilkins is actually the most expensive at 6,600. But Jordan Wilkins looks like he is healthy and going to play in this game. So that is causing some type of confusion between Jonathan Williams and Jordan Wilkins. So that's why I'm going to be going with Nyheim Hines. Hines is the best play, because of his pass catching work. Last year when Marlon Mack missed weeks 1, 3, 4, and 5, Hines saw a total targets of 9, 11, 5, and 9. So that's really the play here, in my opinion. I just think that, with the captain spot, that's where you see a lot of success is with pass-catching backs. So that's who I'm going to be throwing in to our captain spot here, just to kind of mess around with the Bills a little bit. So that's kind of who I'm looking at captain. Obviously, you can also feature a guy like Will Fuller. I think he's a really good option there. We've seen Will Fuller, he absolutely blows up in games. We've also seen Will Fuller in other games where he does absolutely terrible and he gets injured and he disappears. But that's how you win a slate like this, is a guy like a Will Fuller play, because he can be a guy that can break the slate easily and people will be afraid to play him because he's coming off an injury. Obviously, if Fuller doesn't play in this game, Kenny Stills at 6,400 kind of fills into that role of that deep threat. And the last time that Kenny Stills played the Indianapolis Colts, he went for over 100 receiving yards in their first matchup. So that's why I really like him as an option there if Will Fuller cannot go. Now speaking of the Colts side of things, you got Jacoby Brissett, who I think is also another good option. I think really there are ways you can play both quarterbacks. I do think that, though, that Deshaun Watson has a higher ceiling. So if I had to play one quarterback, I probably would play Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson he's a baller. He just straight balls out whenever he plays in the NFL. And he's actually really good off of bad games. A lot of his bad games this year, he's really followed up with very strong performances. So Deshaun Watson is definitely, I think, has the highest upside of, obviously just looking at the quarterback, just look at the two quarterbacks. It's not hard to say that Watson has higher upside than Jacoby Brissett. But Jacoby Brissett probably has the better matchup on paper. Brissett is at 10,400. He's been great against the Texans. He shredded them for 4 touchdowns and 326 passing yards the last time that you guys played each other in Week 7. Brissett is undefeated versus the Texans. He's thrown for 7 touchdowns and 0 picks in his 3 games career played against them. But the question remains of T.Y. Hilton. Is Hilton there? I think that if Hilton doesn't play, I think that Brissett's an easy fade for that reason, and then he kind of becomes more of a contrarian play. But Hilton, just like same with Fuller, raises the bar so much higher for these types of guys. And with Brissett specifically, his home road splits are significantly favor him at home. With the Colts on the road in this matchup. He has not scored more than 20 points on the road this season. So that is personally why I think that Deshaun Watson gets the slight edge. He's more expensive, but I do think that you can still build around those specific players. So again, I think Brissett is more of the contrarian approach here at the quarterback position. But also he obviously takes a massive hit if Hilton doesn't play. That being said, T.Y. Hilton at 9,600 is definitely someone that you need to play if he's in the lineups. He is just too good on it. He's just too good. He just absolutely dominates whenever he plays against the Houston Texans. His career, he has just absolutely just dominated against the Texans. He averages over 100 yards per game. And this isn't like a small sample size, guys. This is a 15-game sample size for T.Y. Hilton. He's averaged over 100 yards per game and 0.7 touchdowns. So he's a big play threat for the Indianapolis Colts and can make a lot of plays against this defense. He wore a clown mask the last time that these two teams played each other in the playoffs last year. That's about how much respect he has for this Houston Texans defense. Jonathan Joseph, get your jockstrap ready. You're about to get roasted by T.Y. if he plays in this game. However, if Hilton misses, Zach Pascal at $8,000 becomes an option. Pascal went for over 100 yards last week and saw a career high in air yards. 102, or not last week he went for 100 yards, the last matchup against the Texans. And then Marcus Johnson, 4,200, is a very, very, very cheap receiver that you consider here as well. He was second on the team in targets last week with 4. He runs a 4.44 and played 92% of the snaps and ran just one less route than Pascal. So these are kind of the guys you really want to play in your GPPs. Guys like Kenny Stills, guys like Marcus Johnson, when the guys in front of them are active. Basically, it's like kind of goes to the fact that we saw it with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill went out with a hamstring, and then automatically every other receiver on the Chiefs got a boost, and it had a very low ownership. So, T.Y. Hilton, none of these guys are coming into this game like 100% healthy, it seems like. They've been dealing with injuries. So, it's a very weird way to approach it, but I think that it makes sense to, have lineups with, I have T.Y. and Will Fuller, and then have lineups with, totally fading the fact that, if these guys both go out, I can totally get a leverage on the field by playing a guy like Marcus Johnson, who's going to be filling the T.Y. Hilton role. He runs a 4.44. He's got speed, so he could roast this Houston Texans defense. And the same thing with Kenny Stills. We saw it the last time the team played each other. He went for over 100 yards. Will Fuller, runs a couple routes, pulls up on a hamstring, and he's out. So that's something to keep in mind, guys. And those guys are also coming in cheaper. So that is definitely why they're worth playing, even when the starters are actually active in this game. I wouldn't necessarily, I cannot have the confidence to play Hilton and Will Fuller in every single lineup just because the injury concern is there and is very, very real. The last guy I really want to mention here as well is Eric Ebron at the tight end position. I think that he's in a really great spot. Again, especially if Hilton misses, it's more targets that will garner towards him. He has a touchdown reception in his last 4 games versus the Houston Texans. He's seen at least 5 targets in each contest against the Texans, and Houston has allowed the 5th most fantasy points to the position over the past 2 weeks. So Eric Ebron, welcome to the show. You're going to get into my lineup, or I'm going to try to fit you in with the salary that I have remaining. So let's see if we can kind of fill the rest of this lineup out with some of these extra guys. So right now, we really definitely spent up a lot of these dudes. Mo Alley Cox, which is an interesting, punt play, which I would be looking at this situation. But as we know, when we build these lineups, guys, we always want to try to fit in a Texans a defense or a kicker. That's just, I've seen, this is what you see on lineups. They're not all skilled players. Winning lineups have kickers and defenses in them. For me, the best defense, I believe, is the Colts defense. Even if you're, doing a Texans stack, if anything, it's just to get more contrarian. But like the fact of the matter is, playing defenses against your offensive players doesn't really negatively impact them. That's just kind of a false narrative. It doesn't really matter because, points allowed is such a low, stat that features in fantasy points. So the Texans defense is definitely the defense that I think is the best play. The Colts defense, I think, is the best play at 3,200. So I think that they definitely should be in line for some ownership there. Looking at their defense specifically, they've gotten at least three sacks or an interception in 5 straight games, making them a very safe foreplay. The Texans' offensive line is leaky. They don't always protect Deshaun Watson super well. Deshaun Watson tends to hold onto the ball a lot of the time, which can get him into trouble, get him into sacks, whereas the Texans' defense is super overrated. They only have 1 game over 10 fantasy points since week 4. In total, 5 outings of under 10 points. So Texans defense is definitely a fade for me where I'm going to buy into the Colts defense. Kiki Cutie is also mentioned as well. If Will Fuller is missing, he is probably going to get super low owned regardless if Fuller plays or not. But especially if Fuller misses, people will, like I mentioned, garner towards Kenny Stills. But Kiki Cutie at 2,400, he actually got kind of more back into, after getting benched in week 9, he got more into the flow of things in week 11, where he just ran 6 fewer routes than your master receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. All right, so let's get back to this lineup here and see if we can wrap things up as we kind of build things out. So we got the Colts defense. I do want to play them. I want to play some Naeem Hines. Definitely want to play Watson. Definitely want to play some Fuller, Hopkins, Hilton. But it looks like for the most part, I probably won't be able to fit in Fuller and Hilton. So I'm going to have to make some sacrifices. Because this is a Watson-focused lineup, I'm going to fade off T.Y. Hilton and see what else I can fit into my lineup. It looks like I can get a little bit of a Carlos Hyde action there. I think that's a contrarian approach, is going with a Carlos Hyde. The running, on paper, really, there's not much for the running game for the Texans. The Colts defense is kind of, mediocre against the run. So, Hyde is not going to garner a lot of ownership. So he's definitely an option here as I'm looking at a more majority Houston Texans dominant team, which is obviously Carlos Hyde is going to have the market share of touchdowns. So I don't mind using him there. But let's see, maybe if we instead, throw Hilton back in there and then go with a Will Fuller. You got 5,300. You can play a guy like Duke Johnson. So, or actually, you can come back with Eric Ebron. So I don't mind that as well either. I think that makes this a very interesting build as well. So yeah, a couple of different options here. I did talk up Eric Ebron, so I'm going to go with him here. So this has us pretty balanced, which I actually really don't like. I actually prefer to have it more lopsided than rather. So you know what? I'm going to make another switch. I'm going to go back to my guy Will Fuller, and we're going to go with some Carlos Hyde action here. So really focusing on the Houston Texans, kind of go with the Texans onslaught. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I think the Texans win this game. Also in this lineup, you could also feature in somebody like, I could just go, with Kenny Stills and Will Fuller. That way I can kind of consolidate the target share. And, if one of them, blows up their knee, the other one will probably make up for the production. So, maybe you get a little bit of both. So this is another option too, and you're leaving some salary on the table. So that'll make your lineup a little bit more contrarian. So we're going to keep this one here for now. But guys, make sure you go check out Win Daily Sports for all of your DFS content for this upcoming week. It's going to be a fire week of week 12. We're just moved over to Discord, so if you're not signed up for a premium membership, you can go sign up at the website, get into the Discord, because that's where you're going to want to be. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you go check out windailysports.com and check out the links in the bio for all your monkey knife fight props, because we want to take the overs on Deshaun Watson for Thursday Night Football.